Good evening. My name is Rhett Butler, just like the movie. A few months into my first year as a physician, in my intern year, my first year of residency, I was scheduled to undergo a month of service on the pulmonology consult service. It's a month-long rotation that we had in the hospital, and I had just finished 2 months in the intensive care unit, and honestly I was ready for a little more relaxed month. I was ready to take a break from all of the central lines and the ventilators, and it was something I was really looking forward to, and all of a sudden this is what I got. Okay, so who are you? Asked the attending physician. I was kind of startled. Even though I had been warned by the other residents, this guy was old and he was grumpy. And though I had been warned, it was very shocking nonetheless. And it was the very first day of the service, and the attending physician had walked in through the door. He sat up at the computer near the door, and he turned around to face us. And without uttering a greeting, he had asked that question. I pointed my thumb to my chest and I said, "Who, me?" And he said yes, without offering anything in the way of facial expression at all. I said, "My name is Rhett Butler from Texas A&M College of Medicine." He looked me up and down and he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Meaning when I finish residency training. I said, "I want to go into oncology." And he kind of smirked and said, "Well, you look old enough where there might be some story or reason why you would want to do that." And I said to him, "Yes, there is." I said, "My brother died of cancer, and I want to get back into the fight." And the doctor said to me, "You know, I've heard this kind of thing a lot of times. People go into medicine with the big idea that they're going to solve something like cancer." He paused for a moment, and he said, "You know you're not going to fix cancer, right?" The conversation was over. I said nothing else to the man. 12 years ago, my brother Ashley died of complications of a metastatic sarcoma. It's a rare malignancy that can often come from radiation treatment that is received for another malignancy earlier in life. My family's cancer history was a very, very long one. And as you might be able to relate, that journey has affected every single aspect of my life. In the spring of 1982, I was 8 years old. And my earliest memory of cancer and the havoc that it wreaks upon a family was when my parents took my brother to New York City. And at the time, I really didn't have any idea of how serious the situation was. I was just a little boy. But I knew that something was wrong. And actually was treated at New York's Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital for a malignant brain tumor. Soon after, the doctors here at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston told my parents that there was nothing else to do for him and to take the baby home and love him for the 4 to 6 months that he had left to live. Ashley was 2 years old. In New York, my brother was treated in a clinical trial, and he was treated with whole brain radiation, chemotherapy, and a bone marrow transplant. And against all of the odds and against all of the prognostications, Ashley survived. But 5 years later, Ashley developed a second brain tumor, this one likely due to the radiation that he received in 1982. The surgery for that tumor cost my little brother his vision. Ashley was blind, mentally and physically disabled. But Ashley never let his illness diminish his zest for life. And that, my friends, is exactly what we had. We had life. In 2004, Ashley was again diagnosed with 2 different radiation-induced cancers. We had a thyroid tumor and then the sarcoma that I mentioned earlier, which was growing in a muscle in the back of his neck. And so for the next 6 years, my family rallied and did what we had always done way back in the day, back in the 80s. We took care of Ashley. And as his disease recurred and progressed, I took on more and more of a central role in helping to make the medical decisions about his treatments. And then in 2010, the unthinkable happened. And my beloved brother passed away due to complications from lung metastasis. I spent the next year making a documentary about Ashley's life, mostly as a way to mourn the great loss. And unexpectedly, that film was selected for a major film festival, and no one expected that. And because of the publicity that the film received, I was invited to give a speech at the Texas Association of Neurological Surgeons Convention in 2012. Now, for everybody here in this room who has ever stood in front of 85 brain surgeons and delivered a speech, you will know just how intimidating and terrifying that experience is. And I was. I walked off the stage that night. Do you remember this, Dad? And I told my father, who was standing at the side of the stage, and he's here this evening, he'll tell you that this actually happened. I walked off the stage, and the first thing I said to him is, Dad, I have to go back and take some basic science classes. I said, if I'm ever going to be in this position again, I want to really understand the words that I'm using. And so when I got back to Dallas, where I was living at the time, I signed up for my very first science class in 2012. It's really the first science class I ever took. It was Chemistry 101. And I did well in Chemistry 101. I took some more classes and I did well again. And finally, I got to a class called Organic Chemistry. So the scientists over here are chuckling because they know what's coming. So I got to Organic Chemistry. And I decided at that time that I was really going to put in my very best effort. And I studied as hard as I could. And I achieved a very, very good score on the standardized final exam. It was a perfect score, and I had never done anything like that before in my life. And so naturally, I was bragging to anybody that would listen. And one of the people that I was bragging to was the doctor that took care of my brother for 28 years. And when I told him what I did, he said, well, Rhett, you know, if you can do that, then maybe you should consider going to medical school. And I said to him, you know, Dr. Wilbur, I'm honored that you would say that. But the truth is, by the time I finish all of the training that it would take to do the only job that I would want to do as a doctor, which is to take care of people like my brother, to take care of people with cancer, I told him, I'll be 50 years old. And Dr. Wilbur said to me, well, you're going to be 50 anyway.
You almost are.
And I almost am. And he said to me, the question is, what do you want to be doing when you're 50? That was the most profound thing that anyone has ever said to me. What a question. What are you going to do? And as I pondered that and thought about it, I realized I had spent so much time on the internet reading about cancer. I had spent so many years, almost my entire life, learning how to take care of somebody with cancer. And I was so proud of the way that my father and mother fought against cancer that I decided I didn't want to let that go to waste. And so I graduated from Texas A&M College of Medicine in 2021. And now I'm very fortunate to be a, thank you. And I'm very, very fortunate to be a senior resident at Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center. I'll be applying for my oncology fellowship this next year. And you know, it's been a long and difficult journey for sure. It's not something that you should take on lightly, starting medical school in the middle of life. And I certainly took some hits along the way, along that journey. One of those hits was when a doctor told my future. And he told me that I was not going to fix cancer. And it wasn't that long after he said that to me that I had the opportunity to spend a month on an away rotation here at MD Anderson Cancer Center. I was working on the sarcoma floor where my brother was treated. I had come full circle and had arrived back at ground zero, and I was doing what I set out to do. And I had an experience there at MD Anderson that I know that I will never, ever forget. There was a patient who had a very advanced disease. He had a chondrosarcoma that was growing out of his chest wall. It was about the size of a grapefruit. It was out here like this. And it had been refractory. In other words, none of the treatments they had tried had worked on this disease. And so the patient was enrolled in a clinical trial. And the experimental therapy that he was going to receive was a cancer-killing virus that is injected directly into the tumor. The problem was the patient's starting the clinical trial had been delayed because of an error in the record keeping, and the documentation, so it was delayed. And the patient's wife, who was in the room with us, was very, very angry about this. And she was reading the riot act to all of the doctors who were in the room. And they were in stunned silence, and so I said, "Can I say something?" And so I said to the woman, "I want to take a moment to tell you just how much I appreciate the way you're advocating for your husband." And then I turned to her husband, who was sitting on the exam table, and I asked him, I said, "Do you know how lucky you are to have somebody who is willing to fight for you this way?" And I turned back to the woman, and her posture had changed. And all of the anger and the frustration that she had been feeling had just melted away with the tears that were now flowing down her face. "I know how frustrated you are," I said to her. I said, "I used to sit in that same chair, in this very same room, and fight for my loved one the same way you're doing today." And now tears were rolling down my face. I told her 12 years ago, I begged our doctor for the chance for Ashley to receive the exact same therapy that your husband is about to get. At that time, the doctor told me, he said, "Rhett, it's not ready yet." And I told her, "But because of someone like you, he's going to get the chance that we never did." So this lady, she rushed across the room to hug my neck, and she did for a very long time. And as she hugged my neck, I thought about the millions of people that were doing the same thing that she was doing, which was fighting for their loved one, fighting for more life. These are the people that sleep on those incredibly uncomfortable fold-out green chairs in the hospital room. You know the ones? And they sleep there all night just so they don't miss the attending physician when he's on his early morning rounds the next day. These are the people who are the maniacs who turn life upside down to start medical school at 44 years old just so they can be in that room again. And these are the people who go out there and donate and raise millions and millions of dollars every year so that this woman's husband can get a chance at a new therapy. And hopefully one day a cure. These are my people. And they live in a place where that reckless and desperate hope survives. And so, there was a doctor who made a prognostication. And he looked into his crystal ball, and he shuffled his tea leaves, and then he got in his time machine and went into the future and came back, and he told me that I'm not going to fix cancer. Thing is he may be right, but somebody like me will.
Amen. Amen.
And that someone may be just like you. And it's going to be somebody that doesn't ask, what can I do? It's going to be somebody that asks, what is the most that I can do? And on that day, when they fix cancer, I know that my little brother and your loved one will be smiling down on us and saying thank you for not giving up the fight, because it is always a fight. Thank you very much.